Matthew Coller does a great job covering the Minnesota Vikings at Purple Insider, and he's kind enough to join us right now. Matthew, appreciate the time. How you been?
Well, when your team signs a bunch of players and spends all the money, you think, all right, well, this is all according to plan, rookie quarterback contract, JJ McCarthy. And then every morning when I log on to social media and I see a new report, the Vikings are thinking about Rodgers, I keep thinking, this can't be right. They're not going to do this again, right? With the Brett Favre thing. But what is interesting here is that the brass of the Minnesota Vikings, despite all the big money spending, has not spoken to the media. They haven't called any press conferences. Kevin O'Connell hasn't come out and said, guys, stop with the Rodgers stuff. Come on. You think we're crazy? McCarthy's the guy. So the fact that we haven't gotten that, and then Diana Rossini and so forth, people putting it out there that they're still thinking about it, makes me think that there is smoke or there's fire, whatever that saying is, but there might be something to them considering Aaron Rodgers. I don't know, but I don't really get it because they drafted McCarthy 10th overall. So I've been obsessing over this like everyone else. I know you just asked, how are you? But that's where I'm at right now.
No, I understand it. So out of 100% right now, if I had to ask you, give me a number where you feel that Aaron Rodgers is going to be starting under center week 1 for the Vikings in 2025. What do you think that number is right now when we get inside your internal confidence?
I still think that it's pretty low. I would still go maybe 20% chance that happens. I mean, I think what we know from all these reports is that Aaron Rodgers wants to be a Minnesota Viking. And I do not blame him. When you compare it to the Giants, when you compare it to the Pittsburgh Steelers, you have the best receiver in the world in Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison. They brought back Aaron Jones. They've beefed up the offensive line. And oh, by the way, the head coach just got 14 wins out of Sam Darnold, who was previously considered one of the biggest busts of all time. And so if you're Rodgers, you're like, yeah, why wouldn't I want to play there? In similar fashion to when Favre showed up with the Vikings and they had Percy Harvin and Adrian Peterson. Like that, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But from the Vikings perspective, that's where I cannot make it work. Because even though JJ McCarthy missed last season with knee surgery, he had made a great impression on this organization throughout training camp. I was there every day for training camp practices, and he got better and better and better. And there was a serious competition that I think was about to take another step right before he got injured based on how he played in the preseason. So the confidence, even at the end where he got hurt last year, was so high in JJ McCarthy. And then the Vikings loved the way that he handled the behind the scenes stuff. They trained him essentially to be QB1. They had him doing virtual reality, game planning, sit downs with the coach. And then they told us at the combine that, he's doing well physically and he's back up to his normal weight and those things. Everything pointed toward JJ McCarthy is the guy. And I don't know why he wouldn't be. We've seen a lot of young quarterbacks have success in the league. Brock Purdy was year 2 in the Super Bowl. We saw Jaden Daniels go to the NFC Championship. I think quarterbacks are more ready now than ever to step into a situation like this, and you couldn't set it up much better for him. So I don't know why you would make the deal with the devil with Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, has won 13 of his last 34 games, hasn't been good, with a Packers team that's well coached, with a Jets team that was supposed to be well stocked and ready to compete, and that didn't work out. This is just not a player who's been very good since 2021, but sometimes head coaches, they can convince themselves, hey, if I just got Rodgers, then it's going to be Super Bowl time. And you never know. So I'm not closing the door to it until Kevin O'Connell comes out with McCarthy and says he's our guy. The door remains open.
Well, that's the other thing, too. It's like Aaron was so close to getting to another Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers. And they're at the end, right, did not play well up against San Francisco in the divisional round. Did not play well up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the second half when Tom Brady threw 3 interceptions and he was home at an NFC Championship game. Like, if they bring in Aaron Rodgers, my interpretation, it's 1 year, you delay McCarthy, and you're going for a Super Bowl. But, Matt, I don't think Rodgers has another Super Bowl in him. So that's why I feel like it's pointless for the Vikings to bring in Aaron Rodgers.
Right. I mean, what were you doing in 2021? That's the last time the guy was a good quarterback. And if we got to go back that far, then I think you're really hoping and dreaming at that point. And I've seen some people say, well, Rodgers can still spin it. And he played against the Vikings this year. We saw a handful of breathtaking throws, but you also saw that the offense tends to have to be Aaron Rodgers' offense. And I'm supposed to believe that it's going to be different here. I mean, all this stuff is, yeah, I'm supposed to believe it's going to be different than with Matt LaFleur. It's not like he was with a bad coach before in Green Bay and it's not like that organization could have loved him anymore. He's an icon in Green Bay. And they said, okay, we've had enough of the Aaron Rodgers experience. It's time to move on. And then 3-4 years later, you're going to jump on that train. I don't know. It reminds me of how, wasn't there a report that the 49ers wanted to bring in Brady and sit Brock Purdy for another year?
Yeah.
It's like, come on, guys, just go with the younger player. I mean, Rodgers, even in the best light from last year, if you look at Rodgers' performance, he was a mid quarterback. He was not even as good as what Sam Darnold was. So if you get mid performance from him, maybe a little better because he's got Justin Jefferson, you could see some exciting moments happen and some incredible throws that are still in the arm. But you're talking about, if you make that deal with him, you better win the Super Bowl or it was a total disaster, because then you wasted everybody's time and didn't have McCarthy playing. I don't think that it's realistic to put them as a Super Bowl contender with the way Rodgers has played for the last several years.
Matthew Coller, do you think there's a serious appetite amongst the fan base? I know it's tough to get an entire pulse of the fan base, but if you were just, how connected you are and you cover the team and you speak to so many fans, is there a serious appetite for Rodgers, or is this more just, hey, Aaron really wants to go there, but the fans are like, yeah, we're good?
I think there's always a section of fans that want to see the world burn, that because the Vikings never win the Super Bowl, they want to see the craziest thing happen. I mean, that's really true. They get bored, right? Every year you win some games, you go to the playoffs, you get your face kicked in, and that's it. So, hey, why not? Let's do something crazy. There's always that percentage. But if we're doing percentages, I'd say 90% want JJ McCarthy. In fact, the obsession with JJ McCarthy got to the point where last year there were some fans who didn't want to see Darnold playing well because they were worried that he was going to play himself into another contract. And he almost did. I think if he maybe didn't play so well or so poorly in those last couple games. But as the season went along, I think fans were still so into the JJ McCarthy plan. They were like, Darnold, calm it down a little bit here. Maybe like an 8-win season would have been fine. They love JJ McCarthy. He's the golden boy, the chosen one. Think about how rarely it's been in Vikings history since they've had a franchise quarterback. If you go back to Dante Culpepper, but then his knee gets hurt, Teddy Bridgewater, his knee gets hurt. And before that, Tommy Kramer, before that, Fran Tarkenton. I mean, there's been so few examples of this. Meanwhile, everybody in Minnesota has looked to the east over there in Green Bay, the biggest rival, and they've always got their franchise quarterback settled. I think Vikings fans are desperate for this to be figured out and have had enough of this roller coaster of 1 year of Case Keenum, 1 year of Sam Darnold, 1 year of Jeff George, 1 year of Randall Cunningham. I think they want a long-term answer to build around in JJ McCarthy.
The other thing I want to ask you about, I know you touched on it, Matthew Coller, does a great job covering the Vikings Purple Insider here with us as they're trying to gauge what the Vikings' interest is on Aaron Rodgers. The McCarthy injury, we know he had the second surgery, right? We found out about that in November. You talked about what the team said at the Combine. And I know there's so many national pundits, including myself, where we talk about the injury. And I keep on saying, all right, you're bringing in Rodgers because you want to give McCarthy more time. In what world is JJ McCarthy not going to be ready, by week 1 of the start of this? It doesn't add up to me here when people talk about the injury with JJ.
Right. There's only a couple of reasons that you would potentially do something like this. I mean, one of them would be that you look into Rodgers' eyes and are entranced by his previous great throws and success in the NFL. The other reason would be if you didn't fully believe that JJ McCarthy's recovery went as well as you had expected it to go, because meniscus tears are a little bit more on the dicey side than ACLs, where somebody tears an ACL, you snap your fingers, they're back, good to go. But with the meniscus, it can be a little bit more tricky. The Vikings actually had a young player, Sharif Floyd, a few years ago, whose career ended because of a messed up surgery. So you do worry a little bit more about that one. And throughout his recovery, he did lose a ton of weight, which when Vikings fans saw him on TV on the sideline, they were like, wait, is that JJ McCarthy? Because he looks like he went back in time and he's 16 years old now. But that's why when we heard at the Combine, all right, he's back up to his weight. Imagine that. Kids these days can just lose weight, put it back on. Don't you wish that could be us? But, so he's back up to weight. And Kevin O'Connell told us that he's going to be ready for the offseason program, which starts with the lifting and then the OTAs and all that. that to me was an indication like, all right, he should be ready to go. And as much as he learned about the offense and about the NFL, and I think he had a great front row seat for how hard the NFL is with Sam Darnold. One day they love you, the next day they want you out the door. He saw what the amount of pressure, how fast the game moves, and work behind the scenes diligently to be ready for this year. I don't see why he wouldn't be. I'm with you. I don't see why he wouldn't be unless they know something that we don't know.
Let me get your thoughts, though, on JJ as a player. So I like Michigan. I've watched every snap of JJ McCarthy's Michigan career. Do I think he's a great quarterback? No. I thought they asked him to be a game manager at Michigan. There are some moments where they asked him to do more, and he played well in those games. But I know that he's a national champion. He was 27-1. And I think with Kevin O'Connell, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, if he's healthy, I think JJ McCarthy could be just as good as what Sam Darnold did this past year, if not better. What do you think the Vikings could do with JJ McCarthy if, in fact, he does get the baton handed to him and he is the week 1 starter?
So that's interesting because when the Vikings drafted him, I think they thought he's probably quite a ways away. And I thought the same as you. They didn't even really throw the ball with this guy at Michigan. Like, are they drafting a game manager type? Are they trying to get Matt Hasselbeck with Seattle or something here? But I think what they saw was the ceiling for JJ McCarthy and the growth potential. And then that's what I saw, because last year when he first arrived for OTAs, I mean, he was very much a ball of clay, but as he learned more and more, he grew extremely quickly. And by the end of training camp, he was looking like someone who was ready to start week 1. And not only that, but also looking like his ceiling is much higher than people painted it. And I'll admit this is hyperbole, but I came home from a really good practice he had one day and said to my wife, I think we were told that we were getting, Matt Hasselbeck, but it might be John Elway instead. And wow. I know I like that's over the top, but that really shows you though the progress he made in the development. And he was running the whole offense in training camp. And this is not an offense that looks like Michigan. It's not handoff first. This is on the quarterback's shoulders, but the way he immediately took over as a leader, his arm talent, the way he handled the 2-minute drills and stuff like that. I know these are practices, but I've seen a lot of quarterbacks have bad practices doing this stuff. So I think that by the end of that, they were so impressed. And then everybody saw the preseason game that they were ready to have him compete. And had Sam Darnold, like if he had been healthy and Darnold started 2-3 or something, they would have been ready to turn it over to JJ McCarthy, which is why I can't make heads or tails of why Aaron Rodgers is in this discussion, because all of us walked away and Kevin O'Connell called McCarthy the franchise quarterback at the joint practices they had in Cleveland. And I was there for that and thought, well, this makes a lot of sense from what I've seen. So I think that his ceiling after actually seeing him in NFL practices is probably higher than what it looked like in Michigan, because the way Michigan played football, which they won the national championship. So you can't really blame them for playing that way.
And that's why I think this Rodgers stuff is more so Aaron wants to go there. I get your point, why you can't totally rule it out, because the Vikings haven't come out and said, hey, we're not bringing in Aaron Rodgers, we're sticking with JJ McCarthy. That's why I still think the Rodgers stuff is probably not going to happen.
Yeah, the other thing, too, is when I see reports that they're thinking about it, I think, like, what, did they not know?
I think about a lot of things, too, I think about dating Beyonce. Doesn't mean I get a date with Beyonce, all right?
But did they just start thinking like about that? Maybe a metaphor would be like, I think about sometimes if I drove my car 120 miles an hour or something, but I don't do it because it's way too dangerous, right? It's the same thing where you're like, well, what if Rodgers? No. But until they come out and say it, then we're still going to sit here and wait in the layer of Aaron Rodgers that we've all lived in for how many years now. History really does repeat itself here with the same way. We're all waiting on Favre years ago. We're all waiting on Rodgers now.
All righty, last thing on the Vikings, and it has nothing to do with Darnold. It has nothing to do with Rodgers. It has nothing to do with McCarthy. You take a glance at what they've done this offseason, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They're able to get a long-term deal done with Byron Murphy Jr. They bring in Hargrave. They bring in Jonathan Allen as well. How about some other non-quarterback pieces here with the Minnesota Vikings, what they've done this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was the trenches. It was the interior of the offensive line, interior of the defensive line, because, I mean, you all saw what happened in the playoff game, and Kevin O'Connell doesn't want that to happen again. And they showed that they were serious about it. When you spend $18 million a year on a guard who's been okay, I think there's a natural kind of recoil of like, wait a minute, really? That's how much money you're giving that guy? But that's the guard market, and they needed to desperately improve that if JJ McCarthy, assuming it's him, is going to succeed. Getting also a 32-year-old center who's a great pass blocker and Ryan Kelly, that's one of those, hey, it's not going to lead Sports Center or whatever, but it's certainly a big thing for them to have a veteran like that leading a young quarterback. And then on the interior of the D line, they have had nobody who could pressure the quarterback there for like 5 or 6 years since they signed Sheldon Richardson back in 2018. And that was another area where we all watch the Super Bowl. Football people are just like us, where they go, they rushed with 4 on every single play. What if we rushed with 4 more often? Brian Flores will continue to be a mad scientist. He's going to blitz. He's not going to rush with 4 every play. But you see the advantage of that when you have those interior rushers. And if you can get them, they are worth their weight in gold. So I really think that they shored up all the weakness areas of their team, and they've set it up. So if you're turning it over to JJ McCarthy, he's got the line, he's got the receivers, he's got the defense, and off you go. And they have a legitimate chance to compete in his first year.
He covers the Vikings for Purple Insider. Also, make sure you check out a book that he did author, Football is a Numbers Game. He is Matthew Coller. Matt, great insight. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for having me.